Welcome to the Creator Spotlight, the interview portion of the Spotlight here on Fightful. I am Steven Jensen, joined as always by Jeremy Lambert. And our guest today is the master of the flip-flop chop. He is Bikini Bottom's favorite wrestler. He is the Castaway. He is CMD. I know this man by a lot of names. I've followed him for a long time. We have Cabana Man Dan in the house today. Dan, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great, Steven. Jeremy, thank you for having me. And Bikini Bottom's most dangerous Dan, wow, you really pulled that one out of left or right field. So that made me smile pretty hard on the inside. So I forgot about that one.
Man, I was actually thinking about it. Like I usually kind of just go off the cuff for these intros, and I try to think about just things about y'all that I remember. And I'm a big fan of Southern Underground Pro. That's where I really started seeing you like often live when I lived in Nashville. We've talked before. It's been years though since we did anything like recorded or anything like that. So a lot to talk about, and you've done a lot throughout your career. You've been around a long time. People might not know this, but you started wrestling like around the year 2000, right?
Yeah, I started training in 2001. I've been backyard wrestling since like 99, 98, and then found an outlaw show in the back of an antique store, and that's where I learned to wrestle, I guess.
Oh man, who actually like broke you into wrestling? For people who may not know, kind of like your history, like getting into the business of wrestling.
I was trained at Wrestling Christian Fellowship by Chief Littlelyn was my initial trainer, and the show shut down about a year later. And this was before social media, and we didn't know where to go, so we just we got literal word of mouth and found other shows, and just started wrestling wherever we could, and outlaw shows, and got trained more by Jack Lord, Todd Zane, Dan Sawyer, Adam Roberts, Patrick Bentley, and some just anytime I could get into a ring before the show, even with like Lash LaRue or take seminars. Took a bunch with Quackenbush back in the day, and just anybody, Steamboat, Gangrel. Just I have a whole list somewhere. I mean, I can send you my resume, and it's like really, really long as far as seminars and stuff. But I mean, you never really stop training, and I always try to hop in the ring before shows and work out with anybody.
Now, someone you just mentioned, I don't know, Jerry, I don't want to take any questions from you, Jeremy, but someone you just mentioned, Cabana Man Dan, Lash LaRue, just recently made his return, 13 years away from wrestling, just wrestled Joey Janela at GCW. How does that feel as someone who like knew him back then, seeing him like couple? Because I was a Raging Cajun fan back in the WCW days. I was a WCW kid, so yeah, how does that feel seeing that like just like last weekend?
Oh, it was great. Back in the day, we worked a lot of the same Alabama shows, and he was the type of guy. Even though he was a TV guy, fresh back on the Indies, he was in the ring with greenhorns like me, working out and trying to spread some knowledge anytime he could. And I saw it again at Top Guy Weekend over the summer. He was at Rocket City Championship Wrestling in Huntsville, and after everybody left, he hopped in the ring, and you could see that spark and twinkle in his eye. And he pulled one of the trainees into the ring and started bumping him around. And I was like, okay, he wants to do this again. And then he started cutting a promo, and that's whenever I think he was announced for GCW within the next week. So it was cool.
I did want to ask about the Bikini Bottom stuff because I'm a big SpongeBob fan, and obviously I assume it has to come from the SpongeBob. So I just need to know more about the origins of this nickname here.
Well, it was a cross between like Ken Shamrock being the most dangerous man, and then back when I first started, before I had any like wrestling gear, I used to wrestle in just yellow board shorts, and I would come out with a yellow shirt that just had SpongeBob's face on it, and the whole shirt was the rest of SpongeBob, and it was like an angry grr face. So I would come out with that, and then I had a straw hat and a grass skirt, and just whatever I could find back in the day to really get into a fun Islander character. I just put it on there, and I really loved SpongeBob then and now. And, I tied that in. And then with Southern Underground Pro, I was like, let's just go, let's just really go there. And we did Bikini Bottom's most dangerous Dan instead of man. So I like Dan and man puns. So it all kind of worked together great.
Yeah, and one more SpongeBob question before Jensen yells at me.
No.
He wants to ask about all the wrestling stuff.
No, people want to know this kind of stuff. So
Yes.
I just don't know a lot about SpongeBob, and I do apologize. I think during my intro I said Bikini Bottom's favorite wrestler. It had been a while since I heard that intro. You called that, so fair enough. But yes, Bikini Bottom's most dangerous Dan to be.
Yes.
I mean, maybe even their most favorite wrestler. There was the episode where Patrick and SpongeBob wrestled each other. So, I mean, maybe Patrick and SpongeBob are more favorites than Dan, but we'll give Dan the nod saying Bikini Bottom
Where are they at?
him. Yeah, that's right. Who have they ever beaten?
Yeah.
Technically, that match went to a draw, so
That's
nobody
right.
won that thing. I was going to ask, like, kind of favorite SpongeBob episodes.
Oh gosh, my dog just jumped on the cord and almost yanked my laptop off the table. Oh gosh, I just got into a long like binge, and then there was one on Twitter that's like, hey, stop what you're doing and watch this episode of SpongeBob. And I was like, well, I'm at work, I'll just stop what I'm doing and just watch this episode of SpongeBob. And it was whenever SpongeBob came up with the colorful Krabby Patty.
Yes,
and
the
then
pretty patties.
the pretty patties, and
yes.
then Mr. Krabs, swindled him and stole it from him, gave him the Krusty Krab, and then those pretty patties like made everybody sick and turned colors and stuff, and wanted their $1 million of refunds, and he ran away. So that's my current favorite because that's the most recent one. That's how my mind works.
Fair enough on that. I bring that episode up a lot with I have kids and they like to have the Play-Doh and stuff. They'll mash the Play-Doh and it's like, here, it's a pancake. I was like, there's this SpongeBob episode where it's just different colors of hamburgers out there. Jensen, I will turn it back over to you for the wrestling side of things.
No, dude, it all goes hand in hand because I thought it was smart, like sub graps, like especially coming out and with like the coconut and the glasses and the flip flops, and the whole thing worked really, really well. One of my favorite moments from kind of that era was when I can't remember the full team, but it was like Team Sup represented in like the collective weekend, and that was just a really cool moment, just like seeing you guys like out there in front of like kind of like the bigger stage too. Because I know wrestling has to have changed a lot since, I mean, just even the distribution alone of wrestling has changed a ton since you've been involved. So can you speak to kind of that? Like, I guess kind of just how much wrestling has changed, not like how big independent wrestling has become, and like how many people can watch it now versus like back when you started doing this.
Well, it has changed a lot. First thing, it's like everything is instantaneous, and the delivery of wrestling is. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna go put you in the bathroom. Hold on a second.
You're good.
The dog has had a run-in.
Dog made a run-in
on this show.
Cabana Man Dan's gonna go heel on the dog.
Yeah.
Never mind. Didn't go heel. Went total babyface. I actually went to a pet store yesterday just to look around at some animals, and didn't get anything, but I did pet the bunnies and a Yorkie, so putting that out there.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, it's like that my style, hasn't changed a whole lot in this whole time, but everything else around it has. Back in the day, like maybe like mid 2000s, we started getting that X Division and that Ring of Honor style. And then Scott Hensley will coin that me and Christian Haim kind of adopted that style and started doing it in Alabama first. And I'm blown up just from running across the house. I'm so sorry. But I mean, the main thing is just the distribution and the word of mouth of how to get your shows out. That's the biggest part of it. And social media changed independent wrestling. Even from whenever I took a break in 2010 and came back in 2016, it was like light years in that 6 years than what it was as far as the delivery of it.
What made you leave, and then what made you come back in that time?
Well, I was wrestling at a show in Piedmont, Alabama called Pro South. It's a weekly show on YouTube every Friday, even now. And I was wrestling Christian Haim, and everything was fine. And then 2 days later, I woke up with like a severely pinched nerve in my neck that paralyzed my arm from the elbow down, and drew my hand up like this, and I couldn't use it. And at that time, I didn't have a kid yet. I was working with my hands a lot, and I was like, wow, this is really serious. So I took 6 years off. I was going through some therapy on my neck, and just to alleviate that, and the feeling came back, and I can use my hand. And then I just took a break. I was like, this is a sign. And then the scene wasn't really great. It was just the same guys and just outlaw shows. Like I didn't know really a lot beyond Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee at that time. You know, I think I traveled outside of the South like 2 times to IWA Mid-South and to Chikara. But what brought me back was New South and Central Alabama. That was the main one. Dump Sanders and Chris McInnes and Christian Haim were there, and they invited me to come check out one of their shows. They were doing something special, is what they said. So I came and checked out the show. Started working at commentary and backstage, but it wasn't until I watched a triple threat tag match between Team IOU, which is now the Carnies, versus Viking War Party, which was Warhorse and Herzog, and Roscoe Eat Lisa. So I mean, these are like some names from the past, and they just killed it. Especially the Carnies. They brought back, and I'll credit Nick and Kerry to this day of bringing that magic back to me in wrestling. That you can be entertaining, you can do these crazy moves, and you can get the crowd invested in what you're doing. And they got me invested. I was sitting right next to Donnie Primetime, like poking our head around the locker room. I didn't know him yet, and we were both just like going ape shit about this match. And I was like, I got to get back in. So I started getting in shape. Just maybe have one more match, and then a week before another show at New South, John Wayne Murdoch had canceled. And Dump called me and said, hey, man, I need you to wrestle this weekend. I was like, oh, I haven't wrestled in 6 years. Oh, you got Christian Haim. It'll be fine. So I stunk up the joint that night, but I woke up 2 days later and I wasn't paralyzed. So I was like, well, maybe I'll just have a match every now and then. And then I have more matches in that last, like, in the previous, like, 7 years than I did in the first 10 times 2 probably. So it's been a really, really strong and fun run, especially 2019 to 2022. Really amazing stuff.
Did you keep up with wrestling at all during your time away?
I mean, I would keep up a little bit. I would show up at Pro South every now and then, or if Dump or somebody would invite me to a show. Maybe it was Christian Haim, IWA Deep South before there were the shits. And I would just do commentary or whatever, but I wasn't really plugged in anymore. People were doing stuff, but I wasn't. I was just doing life.
Well, you mentioned a decent amount of people, that we've talked about or have talked about on the show pretty often and stuff, like Scott Hensley, for instance. Have you known him like that long? Because obviously there's a connection there with Scott running the SCI and Action and SUP and New South, kind of that like ecosystem, kind of in like the whole scene. And Scott's somebody who's kind of like an unsung hero, kind of, in my opinion, like someone who I think does a lot behind the scenes for a lot of people and puts on really great shows, but isn't necessarily the one who always gets like credit for that. So so if you want to kind of speak about him a little bit.
Well, there was a weekly Tuesday night show in North Alabama called Full Throttle Wrestling. And it was right on the Georgia-Alabama line. And you would get some really wacky guys on occasion. You'd have Eric Young, James Storm, Tracy Brooks, Samoa Joe, Chris Hero, Sterling James Keenan, which is Corey Graves now, would just randomly show up on a Tuesday night. And that's where I had met Scott, or he was in the crowd and saw me. I mean, there was just a lot of people that were going to that show. Braden Toon was a little kid watching that show. And even Conrad Thompson was going to that show. And it's just so crazy because this is like middle 2000s. If like maybe 05, 06, 07. So, I mean, that show was like a precursor to a lot of like that super indie show. I mean, yeah, there was some like Alabama wrestling on the show, but I mean, I tagged with Samoa Joe on a Tuesday night there. And, and then you had Chris Hero there. And it's just like, what are they doing here?
All right, well, now I got to ask, what was it like tagging with Samoa Joe? I know it was 2007, but still 2007, Samoa Joe had a good ROH run, and I believe even TNA stuff by that point. So what was it like teaming with Joe?
Well, I mean, I had to carry him through the match.
Sure. Fair enough.
No, he was actually in TNA at that time, and I think he was working the indies with like a bad back. So he was wrestling Insane Lane in a quick one-on-one. Christian Haim came in and made it 2-on-1. Cabana Man Dan comes out, makes a save. Let's have a straight up tag team match, playa. So it was amazing. Joe was a treat to work with, and I don't even know if he remembers that day. I mean, he's been everywhere. I remember it really, really well. And even before the show, he was dropping nuggets of knowledge to people, and just giving what he knew, and it was a treat. He is huge in person. He took a picture with me and my wife, and like both of us together is not as big as Samoa Joe, and he shook my hand in the middle of the ring. We got a nice picture of that, and it was like, it's like, here's Samoa Joe with this small kindergartner. So it was really cool. But it was great. I got I like it. It's something that I get to keep on my mind in memories forever in wrestling, and it's just another Tuesday night at Donna's Country Music Bar.
That's awesome. There's someone else you mentioned is Dump Sanders, who you're a former New South Tag Team Champion with. Obviously, a guy who is very important to New South, as are you. Being a former multiple time New South champion yourself, holding that gigantic title belt. That if you'd like, actually, before we get into anything with anyone else, if you'd like to speak to that title belt a little bit, because I know I've talked to you about it years ago, but most people probably don't know the story of like how that belt came to be, this gigantic world title belt.
Okay, so it was made by Brian Bearden. So if you watch that TNA era, he was the timekeeper, and he was their version of the sweaty, oily guy back in the day. Well, he made some belts back in when New South first started. So they had sent Chris McInnes designed the belt, sent him the schematics, I guess. He cut the plates out, sent the picture back, and was like, "Whoa, these plates are like 1.5 times too big." And it's wrestling, and Dump Sanders was like, "You know what? Fuck it. Bigger is better in wrestling. It'll be a story." So it was a total accident, and it's like, you know what? Let's just have the biggest damn belt in independent wrestling and just embrace it. And they did, and man, that thing is a son of a bitch to carry around in the airports. It always gets flagged. I always have to take it out every time it goes through the X-ray machine. They like swabbed it for bomb residue one time. I'm like, what is happening here? So I started just carrying it in a nasty old pillowcase. That way, nobody's going to steal a title belt if it's in a nasty pillowcase. Like, we had it under a Greyhound bus, and like the guy unloading everybody's luggage didn't want to touch it because I'm not touching that nasty bag because I got it, man. So I went and got that. So yeah, it was a crazy thing. When I had the belt for that year, anytime I was wrestling like a Black Label Pro, or when I went up to Pizza Party Pro and beyond and stuff, I would always have the belt because I wanted to show it off, because I wanted to be like the best spokesperson for New South, Southern wrestling, and Alabama wrestling as I could, and I just carried it around everywhere. I didn't walk out with it if I was going to lose. You could come see it at intermission. So, and then like every 6 months or so, that goofy picture where I'm struggling to hold the belt always goes viral, either on Reddit or Facebook or Twitter, and people don't even know that's me anymore. It's really funny.
That is funny. Can you speak more to like your relationship with Dump Sanders and like guys like Brandon Williams and stuff, who like in prime time, like guy like long time, really influential pieces of New South?
Yeah, so I met Dump when he was wrestling as Triple X with Christian Haim, who was Sexual Vanilla at the time, and like the most outlaw. Like this was back in this show was called Mickey's. And it was ACW, and it was in the back of a boot store. And I tagged with Buff Bagwell that night, and I met Dump Sanders there. And this was like maybe 2003. So fast forward, we like become friends. We're on shows a lot, and then he was the one that invited me to come to New South to check out what they're doing. And then I got fully sucked in, and we had the fantastic first ever tag team championships of New South run, and worked together a lot, during those times. So he's probably one of the hardest working promoters and bookers in the Southeast, if not all of indie wrestling, because whenever he sends like the summer schedule, it's like almost every weekend we're in a different town, different part of Alabama, or we're in a different bar or a Comic-Con or just high school. So it's crazy.
I want to ask about this match, which I'm going to call the Housen match.
Okay.
Where it is Dan Housen, Dan the Dad, Effie Warhorse against you, Devin Monroe Housen, Megabyte Ronnie Housen, Puff Housen. Please tell me about this match and how it came together and any experiences from it.
Well, I think Mikey at Black Label Pro was having a very high fever, and went to sleep one night, and then decided to do this Danhausen team versus 4 other Danhausens. And I think they announced that match before I was booked for it, and I was like, man, I hope they book me for that because Cabana Man Danhausen. There was like this really bad Photoshop picture of a long time ago. I don't know who made it, but it was a conglomeration of Danhausen, Cabana Man Dan, and Colt Cabana, and it was Colt Cabana Man Danhausen, and it was just like a bunch of broken action figure pieces put together. And I was like, ever since then, I was like, it'd be really cool to be like doing this. And then it happened, and it was really wild because the previous time I was at Black Rebel Pro, I was still like the happy-go-lucky flip-flop chop guy. And then fast forward to like maybe 2 years later when I come back, I'm like doing the Castaway gimmick with the big beard and like totally different look and jacked and all that. And it was really fun. Danhausen did our makeup along with Kayla and another girl. I don't remember their names off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But
I can't remember who the other girl. I remember Kayla doing it though. I for sure remember her being a part of that because she was tweeting about it. Like
yeah. And we did that, and it was really fun, and like it was just total like silly match, but it was really fun. I haven't had a chance to work with Warhorse before, and Dan the Dad, and Effie like that. So it was, and Danhausen, we've worked several times before that, but it was really fun.
Dan the Dad has been on our show, and he is very fun. And Mega White Ronnie is a friend of the show at this point. I would say anybody that does an eating competition with me, I'm going to consider a friend of the show. So just looking at that cast there was very exciting for me. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. I did want to. You brought up Colt Cabana. Have you talked to Colt and ever gotten any advice? Been able to pick his brain, because I know he is very respected on the independent scene just for basically everything he's done for the scene.
Well, we've only met like 1.5 times. I went to one of his $5 wrestling live shows when they were in Atlanta several years ago, and I was like, "Hey, if I tell you who I am, will you punch me?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, "I'm Cabana Man Dan." He's like, "Oh, holy shit!" And we shook hands and stuff. I mean, I didn't really get a chance to like pick his brain because he was getting ready for the $5 wrestling. I mean, if anything, he was dropping knowledge during the $5 wrestling on what not to do. So that was good. And like I had a weird thing. So I always thought we had heat because back in like the early 2000s, they had an NWA convention in Nashville, and I was representing Ultimate NWA, and there was a guy there, and I don't know if this was real or not. He was claiming to be Scrap Iron Adam Pearce's brother, and he's like, "Hey, you need to change your name because there's already Cabana in wrestling." And I was like, I don't know Colt Cabana. I mean, I'm like a kid at this point, and we both had like the Cabana name at like the early 2000s. Like, we're not even the same. I'm doing like a Hawaiian character, and then I always thought we had heat because of that, and I guess we didn't because he didn't punch me in the face. And then the next time I saw him was I was doing streamers and ring crew for Ring of Honor, and he was there doing commentary, and I was like crouched by the commentary table, like collecting gear and streamers. So that's the half meeting was that one.
We need to clear up. Yes, we need to clear up if you have heat. It doesn't seem like it. You think
I don't
if
think
you
so.
if you introduce yourself as Cabana Man Dan, and he didn't immediately be like, "I'm not talking to you," then I think things.
No, I don't think so. And I think even like there was a time whenever he might have been in one of the developmental things with a friend of mine at another show, and the friend of the other guy in developmental was at an Alabama show, and he like sent a picture of me to him or something like that. I don't know. This was a million years ago too. So there's sillier things to have heat at with other people in wrestling. So I think we're okay.
Now speaking of heat, okay. So this was potential heat that I know isn't heat, and that's why I'm bringing it up. But there is something that's very infamous, something that we've actually, it's become like a long going like kind of story arc throughout our show. Me and Jeremy are doing our show together, interviewing a lot of independent wrestlers and stuff over the last, how long have we been doing this together, Jeremy? A little over a year together, year and a half,
a year and a half at this point. Yeah.
And we've interviewed, a lot of guys, and two of them that have come on the show were Dominic Greeny and Kevin Koo. I was live in the building in the Basement East when you got hit in the head by Dominic Greeny with a ring bell and it was the most brutal, just chill, just the vibe of that place changed suddenly, with everybody just being concerned as to what the hell was that. And you were the one who got hit. We have not talked to Marco yet. He's the only one in this story we haven't gotten, his piece from yet in this scenario. But what was that like in that moment? Because it's become like, anytime I bring up that match, they might be Giants versus VIF, the first thing gets brought up is, was that the match with the ring bell?
Man, the first thing was like, that I thought, I was like, that really fucking sucked. And I don't know what that was. I was like, so I heard him ring the bell. I was like, okay, here we go. I'm about to turn around, and get hit in the head, where I'm seeing a bell coming towards my face. So I know what to do. And the next thing I know, I am on the ground. I mean, I heard the bell. Like, it was so comedic. Like, if you watch a cartoon where someone gets hit with a bell and it makes that bell sound, like, you wouldn't think that would really happen in real life. And it sure did, because I have that hard Islander head. But I knew that I took a second, and I was like, it wasn't even a second. I was like, yeah, but I really need to get hit again in the front, because I want to bleed. I'm going to bleed, and this is how I'm going to bleed. I got to get hit in the front. So I had to like shake it off, and it instantly had like an egg on the back of my head. I could feel it like instantly. And I had to get up, and this was like halfway through the match too. Yeah. So we had a lot left to go. So I really couldn't worry about it at that time. I needed to worry about it later. So, it happened, and we still had business to attend to, and we just kept going. And that match is that match is my, I don't know, I have so many favorite SUP matches. SUP is like my home away from home. The Basement East is the home away from home. And a place where I shouldn't have gotten popular at was the place where I felt like the most popular at for me. And I don't know why, but it's a place I miss dearly. And but yeah, anyways, yeah, it happened, and we had to keep going. So that's well, there's no heat there. It was just more like a what the fuck. Hey, I'm sorry. I was like, dude, we were just going wild out there. I mean, if it was just like a regular professional wrestling match and I get hit with a bell like that, that'd be really a reason to be upset. But I got him back with the flip-flops with the tacks on it. Because I pressed them pretty hard into his head, as hard as I could for that time, and until he made me stop. So I feel like we got a receipt pretty quick on that and kept back at it.
Yeah. Well, and it was good to know that you guys just kind of like, it was like it happened, receipt, just moved on, no heat going forward. And
other wrestlers were more mad about it than I was.
I believe it. I mean, because a lot of decisions were made for that thing. Like, that was the main event. I remember this very vividly, because Mose, who I know he's worked for New South as well in the past. But Mose and me were talking during intermission of that show, because Ali Catch and Brett Eisen had just wrestled for this Bone Storm title. And I was confused. I was like, why did they put the world title or the Bone Storm title on the line in it's like such a big match for SUP, because like Ali Catch, heart and soul of the company, and Brett being the champion he was and everything. And Mose was like, just wait till this main event. Like, I think this main event's going to be pretty worth it. And I was like, oh yeah, I bet. I didn't know what to expect. Were you, I don't know if it was like a few of y'all or just you, or a few, like, were you one of the ones who like kind of made the decision on the spot? Like, I'm going to bleed tonight. Like, I know there was like a few of y'all were kind of like deciding what was going to go on during this thing. And maybe some of y'all hadn't even bled before this match and like decided like this was the time.
I had never done that. I mean, I've bled like on accident, but I've never done a match where everybody's bleeding like that. Like, I've never done like death matches or real plunder matches where it can get messy like that. So I wasn't going to at first, but then I was like, you know what? When this is a program that's been built for 8 months. We got Violence is Forever. This is supposed to be, this street fight. There's weapons. There's sharp objects out there. There's no glass, thank God. But, let's really make this special. And it was kind of like my own peer pressure. And, I had a couple beers. I was like, you know what? Let's do this. I know I have to drive back to my home, pick up my family, and drive to Orlando for a week at Disney. But I got to get color tonight, baby. And so if you fast forward and see my family photos for like Monday or Tuesday at Universal, rather, I have this big bandage on my head. So my wife was real thrilled. But no, it wasn't going into that day that I didn't know I was going to be bleeding buckets, but they made some really damn cool 8x10s because it's like a hardcore CMD, and that wasn't what I was about at the time. And I don't really want to go down that path too often.
It was worth it though for the
sure.
I mean, oh yeah, man, that match is gonna live on forever. That was at that point, that was actually to this day, I think that's the most brutal match I've been at live. And I've been to some GCW shows where things are pretty wild, but that was everything happened. There were skewers, there was tacks to the feet, there was tacks to the chest from you, there was the bell shot. I mean, not just the surface of it. I mean, little Marco Stunt's blood was all over my sandals, dude. I mean, it was like, that was brutal. And also you mentioned this pretty topical. You mentioned, thank God there was no glass. What's your opinion on using real glass in wrestling?
I mean, you can. I'm not, and please don't do it before my match goes out. And whenever I see like glass being used and I see it and it happens, or thumbtacks before my match, I'm always so pissed off. And like, I'm like running around backstage, like, someone better clean that up. I get heated about it because it's like, whoever like put the card together realized I'm wrestling after some sort of hardcore match or something that involves glass, and you had to put me after it. You should put me before that. But whatever.
I remember one time, there's actually been a few backstage stories I've heard that I won't talk about people getting really upset about stuff like that. I've heard about one person that no one would be surprised, but I've heard about low-key getting very upset about these things at shows. Also, I've just kind of funny. I remember one time Dr. Cube, they took his big cardboard box and like used it to get all the stuff out of the ring in one show, because it was like, we got to get this out of here now, and they didn't have anything else to put all the glass and stuff in, so they just grabbed his helmet, his mask, helmet, whatever you want to call that, and used that to get the ring clean. So I thought that was kind of funny.
I would be pissed too for them. I mean, you got to put that on your head.
Yeah.
Get a broom.
Guarini mentioned, he's like, he's done a lot of things in his career, and he's like, yeah, I don't mind doing some of the hardcore stuff at the times, right? He's like, but the tacks to the feet, glass, like that was the worst thing I've ever experienced. So yeah, imagine doing all of that, and then, or if you have it before the match and it's not cleaned up and you accidentally step on a tack or a piece of glass or something.
I have done
absolutely
that.
Sucked. Oh,
and it just takes me out of the match. Like, I will stop in my match and just be like, take it off, and I just get mad, and then I have to like turn the switch back on. Okay, now we got to go back to what we're doing. Now that I've removed a shard out of my foot, let's get back to what we were doing. But yeah, it totally breaks my character when I'm out there, and it just makes me mad. But
I could not imagine. I have kids, and they leave stuff around everywhere, and if I just step on something or trip over something, I'm like, what are we doing here, children? What are we doing? So I imagine it's very much the same thing of like, all right, there's just a random tack in the ring, and
it's just one. And that's the worst.
Yes, that's my biggest fear. Like, not even as a wrestler, as a fan watching wrestlers, like in death matches and hardcore matches and stuff, my biggest fear as a fan is seeing someone just catch a stray. Like I wouldn't be that concerned. I mean, I wouldn't want to do any of it personally. That's why I talk about it instead of getting in the ring, of course. But I would imagine if you took like 1,000 tacks at one time to your back, it would be better than not knowing you were going to step on one tack and it just catching you in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, I'm determined to be the next Action Mike Jackson, and the less of that I can have in my matches, the longer my career will be. So
there you go.
We're fine.
There you go.
That's a good goal right there. I was going to ask you about your experiences at GCW. You've made a handful of appearances for them, and especially with the GCW New South shows. So what were those shows like? Man,
it was amazing. Like, back in January when I wrestled Blake Christian, I mean, that, we saw how much time we were going to have, and it's like, Blake is, he's the current champion now, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he's a top guy there, and we've worked each other and known each other for quite a while in the Southeastern scene. Like, we met the first time as extras for Raw in Memphis, and that's like right before he really blew up. And then we worked each other at like Wombat and just like various random shows, like tagging and against each other. But he had grown up and matured so much as a wrestler to January of this year, this is a big match for me. So, I can't be in there and like stink it up. I mean, it was a good time for my character and the direction of how I wrestle to meet with a true heel. And that's when you get the best out of me as a true babyface versus a true heel. And we could tell a story, and that's what we did. And that's what it was a really great match booked by Brett. Is because you have like Mr. Outside of Adam Priest and Mike Jackson, you have Mr. Alabama with Cabana Man Dan, like 3 generations of the Alabama guy versus the current top guy. And it was really good. And then the next night versus Tony Deppen replacing a hurt Brandon Williams. And, I didn't know that I was going to have that match until that day. So that was another treat. And it's like Tony Deppen's another top guy who's everywhere. So it was back to back, just really banging matches with top guys and really good stories in the vacuum of both of those matches too. So I was really pleased with the turnout of both of those. I went 1-1 that weekend, so I was happy with it.
Yeah, and the fans really gave you a great reception as well. Which is
I won't forget about that either, because I had trimmed down like 10 pounds down to 149 that night, and I was like, okay, I look good. I came out and I was like, I was blown away. Like, I was like, yeah, I'll get a good reaction being, who I am in Huntsville of all places. But fuck, man, that was a really good reaction. Like during the intermission, a lot of people was like, hey, I remember seeing you at Global Championship Wrestling back in 06, or I was there on Tuesday nights in 07. A lot of people that used to go to Alabama shows all came to the first GCW show in Huntsville. And it was just like story after story. It's like, hey, I met you and I was in elementary school, and now I'm graduated from college married with kids. I was like, oh, I'm really old, because I had started when I was 16 and I'm 38 now. So it's like, yeah, I've wrestled for people that were children when they met me. So it's crazy.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
I was going to ask about being a WWE extra. You mentioned doing that with Memphis and with Blake Christian. Was that the only time, or have there been other experiences as well?
There's 2 other experiences, because I did like a Monday in Memphis and a Tuesday in Birmingham in 2019. And then recently this year, I did one in Knoxville for SmackDown. I think back in the summer or spring. So it was cool. It's always cool to see how the sausage is made. And I don't pass. They're very thorough on their physicals, and I'm a very beat up wrestler. So it's just cool to be part of it. And if they have stuff that's not physical, like being part of the Adam Rose guys or the conga line, and just being backstage doing whatever, I get to do that. Or I did get a Singh brother thrown on me a bunch one night by Braun Strowman, and that was really funny. I mean, I talked to Vince McMahon that night too, and that was wild.
Yeah, please, you can't just gloss past that. Okay.
Yeah, Vince McMahon. What do you ever do? Yeah. No, I mean, like, I'm not starstruck, because we're there, conducting business or whatever. But and then you have Vince McMahon walk up to you, and you're like, that's like the godfather of like of professional wrestling as I know it. And they had produced a segment and kind of said what they wanted to do. So now it's time to present it to Vince. So he's walking up and like, he's told, well, Braun's going to throw the Singh brother on this table right here, and there's 2 other tables behind us. And he's like looking, and he's like, okay, well, goddamn, can't Braun throw him to a 3rd table in the back? And like really show that, Braun's a big deal. I was like, yeah, we'll do that. But no, we had the Singh brother thrown on us. Let's do it again. Singh brother thrown on our table a 2nd time. Someone yelled fuck. And Triple H like, you can't say fuck, do it again. So we just did it a few times with this one poor Singh brother. And then there's like, okay, well, let's do one more with the other brother. And they take that take. So, it was funny. So, I mean, it was really cool. Just, it is like a hive of all the production people, whether they're local or the ones that come with them. It's just like, this is like a full thing. This is like making movies, pal. So it was crazy. It was awesome. Anytime I can go and just be a part of that, I try to, because it's just really cool.
Yeah, you said you did both the, unless I heard you wrong, did you do both the conga line for No Way Jose and Adam Rose's
no, just the conga line, but just stuff like that we were allowed to do.
Cool.
without doing anything physical. Like I can't go, I wouldn't be allowed to like be squashed by Brock Lesnar, which is fine by me.
Sure. We were talking about Blake Christian being a great current GCW champion. Another champion I wanted to ask you about, another guy who got started young, you being at 16, another guy who started as a teenager, Hunter Drake, the current New South champion. He's another guy we've gotten a chance to interview a little while back, and seeing his progression from Talladega Nights to now has been fantastic. He's also been kind of finding a spot for himself in GCW lately too, and what's like seeing the progress he's made and where he's at as the New South champion currently.
Man, I mean, him and Braden Tude shocked the scene by the ending of Anniversary 8, where Dylan McQueen wins this triple threat cage match. Holy shit, the underdog, which everybody was expecting Hunter Drake to really win. So he wasn't the underdog, but Dylan McQueen was kind of like this dark horse. He wins, and then Braden Toon comes out with his signed, sealed, and delivered instant championship match, Money in the Bank type thing. He starts blasting people, which is very uncharacteristic of Braden Toon. Just hit him like being a jerk. And then he hands it over to Hunter Drake, who cashes it in and pins knocked out Dylan McQueen. So it was shocking. So this is a character turn that nobody was expecting, and people were still talking about it. And like me and Hunter Drake, we've only wrestled each other like in a tag match and then at a bar show in the rain. So we haven't had that real one-on-one experience, because I was like, hey, Hunter, it's raining really bad. We've got some big things coming up. We're going to have a really damn good match one day. It's just not going to be today. So we'll probably, especially now that he's kind of turned his back on the New South faithful, there could be an opportunity for first-time matchups between Hunter Drake and myself and Braden Toon.
He's bragging about taking nights off, man. He's hanging out with that New South championship, like not showing up to shows and stuff, it looks like. So yeah, you might have to go represent for the company, man.
Yeah.
Dan, as we start to wind down here, my last question and something that we ask everybody on this show, the coolest thing in your room.
Okay, so the coolest thing in my room, well, this is kind of like a wrestling related one, and then the non-wrestler related one. The coolest thing that's in my room that's a non-wrestling thing is a leopard gecko named Zammy that we fostered from some friends that my daughter goes to dance with. They had their house burned down, and they were able to save some of the pets, and Zammy the leopard gecko was one of them. So we adopted him, and he's really cool. And then on my nightstand, hanging on my lamp, is my Young Lions Cup 5 medal from Chikara. I've still got it hanging. Like, I've had people try to buy it from me, and I'm just a guy. I'm not gonna sell most of my wrestling stuff or any of my wrestling stuff if I can get away with it. And that was near and dear to me, so I keep it on my nightstand. So that my Chikara medal is a big deal, a cool thing to me. I don't know if it's cool to a lot of people, but it's cool to me.
Very cool.
Yeah. Dan, thanks for joining us here tonight. We really appreciate it. Let everybody know where they can find you at.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on X at Cabana Man Dan. You can find me on Instagram at cabana.man.dan. I'm also on Facebook as well. You can't find me at shows for a few months because I have a torn calf, but I'm healing well. It's also given me time to take care of some other nagging injuries, like I had a procedure done to my elbow, just a nasty injection in my elbow to cure tennis elbow, and I've got a swollen left knee. So I'm taking a nice deserved break after the last 7 years of a 20-year career in wrestling. So I'll be back soon, and Rolando Perez won't know when it's coming, and I'm gonna beat his ass. So he kicked me in the balls at Anniversary while I was in a boot and beat the shit out of me. So he's gonna get his, whether it's at New South or I might follow his ass to NWA. You never know.
I would say Rolando Freeman over there. You better watch out, the NWA. Yeah, man, I can't wait to see you return, man. I'm a longtime fan. It was great to have you on the show today, Dan. And I'll always I value all your work everywhere, but like I have a real soft spot for like the Southeast, and like getting to see you live at like Chattanooga and Nashville and stuff is like it's a big part of my fandom as like a independent wrestling fan. Very important to me. So very important to have you on the show today. And Now we just have one more left from that VIF versus they might be Giants match to talk to you about that whole thing. We got to get Marco's son on here someday.
Yeah, you gotta find. He's hard to find these days. So
he is. He's laying low.
Yeah, well, he can't miss you if you don't go away. So he's gone away right now. So we're missing him.
I appreciate you, Dan, because we haven't had too many interactions on X, if you want to call it that. But I've reached out to you a couple of times, like, hey, can you like get me in contact with this person? And you've always been very kind and helpful in doing that. So I appreciate that. You've linked me up with people and helped get them on this show or another show that I do. That's again big of you, because you don't know me. You don't know me from anybody else. And you've just been helpful. And I appreciate that you've been helpful to someone like me. So thank you.
for doing y'all have been helpful in the scene of independent wrestling, especially with like the Southeast, whether it was just like sending you reports, whether it's a New South show, or if I'm doing a spot show in a elementary school gym for Mike Jackson against Adam Priest for the 20th time this month. I just like to, just send stuff out, and, Action's another one that, that carries some weight in the Southeast, Southern Honor as well. So it's like there's a lot of unsung heroes in the Southern scene, and it's just nice for some light to get shed on these folks.
Yeah, we're trying. Jensen's going to bat for all of them, so Jensen will.
Oh yeah, well it's funny. It's funny. I felt bad that it took this long to get you on, because we've had like everyone like a Jason and around you on lately too. So it was like we're shipping away like I had kind of all this New South talent, and I kept telling Jeremy, I was like, eventually we got to get Dan on here. Just got to get kind of the right timing. And with Dan, you've been on our list for quite a while. So I'm very happy this happened.
Well, I appreciate it. And like, man, we could talk for just hours about because there's a lot. Like I was like typing out, just cool people I've wrestled. I was like, holy shit. These are stars before they were stars whenever we locked up. So it was really, really cool. Really cool stuff.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. But thank you again for doing this tonight, everybody. The links are below to follow and to support Dan. You can check out the description below. Check out the links below. Click those. Thank you again, Dan. Guys, we'll be right back here on the